right, so Vince is furious.
Vince is furious. Needless to say that we end up at the strip joint Lookers and not Smith & Walensky's. But, and we went our own way. And then I still had, I think I still had In Your House with Sean left, right? Mm-hmm. I think I still had the one pay-per-view where Sean, to put Sean over at In Your House. But I remember, you know, Vince, when I sat down with Vince, I said, okay, obviously you're not going to come to agreements. I said, I want to go out and I want to do this right. I said, I owe Taker, you know, I'll do a job for Mark, mm-hmm. and I'll do a job for Sean on the way out. And he said, I'd like you to do a job for the Ultimate Warrior on Raw. And I said, if he can beat me in a shoot, then he can get a win. But he said, okay, then we won't have that match. I said, but I said, you know, Mark, you know, I'd watched Mark work with broken ribs for months with a crushed eye socket. So, I mean, I've always had an incredible amount of respect for Mark. So I said, you know, for Take, I'll do anything. For Sean, I'll do anything. But anybody else, fuck them. You know, I'm leaving, and I don't know anybody anything. But those two guys I owe. And I did a job for Mark at WrestleMania, and did a job for Sean in Omaha and left.
Scott had already gone.
Scott had left. His date was June 6th. Mine was June 12th. I think that, or maybe he was May 27th. I was June 6th. It's a 2-week difference between our departures.
The Monday Night Wars were going full throttle. Scott Hall made his debut on Nitro that night and cut that immortal promo. You know who I am, right, and you know why I'm here.
You know where I came from.
Right. Prompting the buzz throughout wrestling that people that knew that it was a work, and the smart fans and whatnot knew what was going on, but they thought maybe this angle is going to be something like an invasion angle, right, that the WWF is going to invade WCW. And WCW, for once, not missing the boat, never really said. So it looked, for all intents and purposes, like the WWF was invading us.
Well, you know, when Eric laid it out for me in Phoenix, you know, he laid this angle out, and I'd seen some of the Japanese invasion angles that they'd done from company to company, and I thought, fuck, it's kind of been done. It was kind of old. But then Eric kind of laid it out, you know, and I said, well, there's only going to be two of us. The funny thing is, you know, like Eric, you know, would always, when we were kicking their ass, would be put in WCW. Oh, yeah, you know, like, what a great company this is. And I said, you have to realize, Eric, that when this angle started, two guys from New York held your whole company off, and everybody believed it. You know?
Doesn't say much for what he brought. What was there before you?
It wasn't. I mean, it just that was the perception of New York, and originally Sting was supposed to be the third guy that joined us, and I talked to Eric, and I really pitched the fact that I thought that Hulk should be the one. And I laid out a finish to him. I said, you know, bang, bang, bang. He drops a leg on the other guy. The finish that we ended up doing. And he said, I don't think Hulk will do it. And Eric persuaded Hulk, you know. And Hulk saw, you know, Hulk was doing that movie with, like, Lonnie Anderson and the guy from the Man from U.N.C.L.E., whatever the fuck his name is.
Ooh.
Vaughn, somebody. Not Vince either.
Robert Vaughn.
Robert Vaughn. Not Ilya Kuryakin, but the other guy. No. Right.
So off we go. Scott's in, you're in.
And Hulk's smart enough to see that the train's leaving the station. Yeah. And the last thing Hulk's going to do is miss any opportunity. I mean, people will say to me, who's the greatest worker ever in this business? And I say, without a doubt, without even a question, Hulk Hogan.
Is that a different definition of work than what most would be thinking?
To me, we're not, you know, people say, you know, define work. If you're in a business that's completely bogus, nobody's hitting a curveball, nobody bats 300, nobody scores 40 points, nobody gets rebounds, nobody tackles anybody. The only way you beat somebody is because somebody in the back tells you to lay down. To me, the definition of work is, in that situation, whoever makes the most money.
And then by that definition, there is no question.
Hulk's one, Rock's two.
I would agree with you.
I mean, that's the way I look at it. Austin's real close. I don't know what, but you put Rock's movie money into it. I think Rock, you know, but it's Rock and Steve are probably two. Yeah. You know, but I mean, Hogan is, and then Hogan, you know, everybody says Hogan can't work, but I watched Hogan come back at 49 and at 50 and steal 2 WrestleManias, one with Rock, one with McMahon.
Absolutely. So at that point, when Hulk is going to be the 3rd member of the NWO, his heel run, such as it had been, ended in 1980 before his run at the top.
Right.
So for 90% of the fans or more, he had always been the uber babyface Hulk Hogan. So that's, I mean, you're talking about a face shot and a body blow. NWO growing, Hulk's turning heel.
Yeah, I mean, that was, and the thing was that, you know, those Scott and I were stars. I mean, we're nowhere the magnitude that Hulk was. So Hulk gave us that instant credibility.
We're talking Great American Bash, or Bash at the Beach, rather, 1996.
Yeah, Daytona Beach, which I now still home. So the genesis of the NWO is still my home. Damn it. Yeah, when Hulk joined us and jumped aboard, I mean, then it was one of those deals where, you know, that night when they threw all that garbage in the crowd, a guy hit the ring. And I said to myself, I said, wow, I said, we got like that old, like the old timers say, that boy got that white heat. Got real quiet for a minute.
It sure did.
And it did. It was something special.
When Eric laid it out for you and Scott, I assume, was the NWO as a name and an organization and the logo and all that?
No, that all transpired. You have to realize that I think some of the beauty, like people would always say, you know, especially the early Nitro days, I mean, it was like a fucking torpedo drill. You were there. I mean, it'd be 7:45 and we'd have one segment ready. I mean, we'd be going on the air with one segment done.
I can remember vividly getting format sheets.
Right, as it went on. So, I mean, I think the beauty of, I think that's one thing that's missing right now is, you know, I think that Vince's show is still, I mean, it is what it is, but I mean, it should be Monday night contrived. It's this un-raw and it's the most canned live show that you'll probably, guys don't get bullet points, guys get scripts. I mean, it's just, and I know that a lot of it's young talent, but there's a lot of young talent out there that's got a lot better things to, like I said, I don't understand how you can have a room full of people that have never been fucked and never been in a fight write a show about sex and violence. I don't see how that works. Maybe I'm wrong. Obviously not, since fucking the business is in the shitter, but you know.
Back to 96.
Okay, we're back to 96.
Great American Bash.
Yes.
And for my money, still one of the best pay-per-views ever from Baltimore, where you power-bombed Eric Bischoff through the stage.
Right.
Take us back there.
We're looking for something impactful, and that was Eric's idea. And Ellis set up the stunt, and you know, I stuck him through the thing, and it was, man, it was a good. I mean, I watched his knees, you know, land on each side of his head when he went through it, and I didn't see him, you know, to that night in the hotel room. And I knocked on the door and walked in, and he hugged me, and he said, "Man," he said, "you know," he said, I think we really got something." I said, "You think?"
How long after that did Eric join up? Because at that point, Eric was towing the company line. You guys are ruining the sport. You're going to kill us. Blah blah blah. You hit the power bomb. Eric's almost, you know, the most top baby face in the company after that. When did he turn and come back around to your side?
It wasn't very long. It was almost one of those deals. And I'm going to make a reference that when we were off air. You know, if you had Jenna Jameson on the bed on all fours, and how long before you fucking join in the party? I mean, it was one of those deals like. I want in on that, you know.
I don't blame him. And I assume it's a rhetorical question, but please go on.
Exactly. I mean, it's one of those deals. Like, it was red hot. I mean, the minute you got those colors, it was like. I mean,
who developed? Whose idea was it? The NWO logo, which was such a big
I want to
part.
think that was Craig Leathers. I think Craig got that. Developed that logo. Because I know that when we all talked about a logo, we said, you know, it has to be something that non-wrestling people will wear.
Yes.
You know, like the worst selling T-shirt in the world is some guy's face. I mean, that just never works, you know. And so, and they, you know, God bless them, man. Craig picked a winner. Between
the logo and the
porno music,
and the Neil Pruitt voiceover, you know,
right.
The following announcement has been paid for. Those. Apart from the fact that we've got Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and Hulk Hogan as heels running the company, that brought in casual fans. You know, oh, what's that? If I'm flipping by, you know, doing.
Plus, there was that surrealism of you know, we were black and white.
Yep.
I mean, we did our things black and white. We actually bought time. We actually for somebody, even though, I mean, you know, when you go to the movies and you see The Matrix, I mean, you know it's Keanu Reeves in the movie, you know Fishburne's in the movie, but if they can make you disbelief for an hour, 2 hours, if you can do it for 4 or 5 minutes in a wrestling match, that's all people are looking for. So when you're buying time, then it tells you why you're there. And we would have taped shows, and they wanted us to wrestle on these taped shows. And we're like, if we're invading you guys, wouldn't you just edit us on a taped show?
Yeah.
I mean, would you not edit us from a taped show? And they said, well, how do we use you guys? I said, we'll buy time and have empty arena matches. We'll commentate ourselves, and we'll wrestle these guys. Right, until we called some guy Bud Smokey Green, and the people up at Turner said, no more drug references. We got to shut this thing down.
Who was next? You and Hulk and Scott. But before, I'm sorry.
Was DiBiase next?
I think he may have been.
It was DiBiase. Then the fourth was the Giant.
Let me hit one thing.
Sure.
When you guys first came in, just you and Scott, I can remember vividly having production meetings where we were told, do not call him Big Daddy Cool. Do not call Scott the bad guy. Certainly you can't call him Diesel and Razor. Well, what do we call him? We don't know. Right now, for like a month, and you remember, this man Hall and this man Nash. That's all we could call you.
And then Gene was the one at the Great American Bash that said, you interloopers, you outsiders. Gene came up with that phrase, which basically, when we walked through the curtain, I looked at him. I said, that was pretty sweet, that outsider thing. That was Gene Okerlund that came up with that.
Good.
That Gene came up with that, and but to me, like Hall and Nash was kind of like Hall and Oates. It had and we had just went through all that bullshit. I'll tell you a funny story. When Scott and I, when we first came in, there was, I don't think, like, we were getting so much heat on the babyface on a daily basis. The babyface, we could hear him. I remember one time the Target Center, Sting and Luger saying, what the fuck, these guys are killing us every week. They beat us up, they leave us laying. And, Sullivan was booking at the time, and Sullivan's philosophy was like a hot air balloon. You got to get heat in it, get heat in it, get heat in it, get to rise before you let air out of it. You can't put air in it, drop it, he said, you'll never get this balloon off the ground. He says, you got it. And God bless Sullivan, man. He could book heat. I'll tell you that. I mean, Sullivan was highly instrumental in that NWO success because he believed in heat, and he knew that people would wait and watch for the baby faces to make the charge. So that next Monday, and they would watch the show back and forth, Ross came on and said that next Monday, Diesel and Razor Ramon would be on their show. So, I go home, and my at that time my pager's just 404 number, the 911, like one after another. I'm thinking, fuck, somebody's died or something. So I call the number, and it's Janie. She flips me to Eric. He's like, what the fuck do you guys think you're doing? And he's under the impression somebody has worked him into thinking that Vince has let us go to basically decimate the company, beat everybody else, and then we're going to go back, and then Vince is just going to defend us.
Did you have a contract at this point?
We had just like a deal memo. We didn't have hard contracts.
Oh boy!
So immediately, they rush us into Jock and Jill's, and they sign us to a longer deal, more lucrative deal.
Of course.
And of course, we're acting completely dumb to it all because we are. Yeah. I'm like, you want to give me more money and have me stay here longer? Whatever. Mm-hmm. And then of course the next Monday, Kane and some other jack-off from Canada come out as Razor and Diesel, and it's like, no, it wasn't them.
Not the greatest moment. Glenn Jacobs and Rick Bogner, when they
is that who was Rick Bogner?
Yeah, Rick Bogner, and they could not fill your shoes up there. But let's worry about them so much. So now we're in. DiBiase is in there.
In.
Now at some point the NWO had grown to 7 or 8 members, and it became, how do we use the NWO at this point? And someone had the idea, is Sting going to join? Is Page going to join? Who were the top baby faces there? Tell us about that line of thinking.
Well, what it was basically this time was then I remember Bischoff came out, and Bischoff said that he was giving contracts to anybody that would jump sides. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe Bagwell was the guy that jumped that night. I think Bagwell jumped that night. And I believe that Scotty turned on his brother at a pay-per-view.
That's correct.
And
he showed up the next night with his haircut and
right.
blonde. Yeah.